What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes, always delivering big names in the sport of mixed martial arts. And today we're branching out a little bit. We're going to be talking to a couple of the suits out at ESPN. Let me introduce them first. Glenn Jacobs, he's a VP of MMA production, and Matt Kenny, VP of programming and acquisitions. Let's talk about the Sphere, guys. UFC 306 is this week. It's fight week. We've turned the page from last week's UFC at the Apex card and everything. And now we're just jumping out of our seats, waiting to see this historic event. Welcome to MMA Junkie Radio. And I wanted to ask you both, whoever wants to go first, perhaps Glenn, since you joined us first, what excites you the most about what's on tap, since you've probably gotten a peek at what's happening behind the scenes?
I have. And look, what excites me the most is that how often do you get to be part of something that's truly unique in sports? Like, this is so different than anything that's ever been done before. The chance to be a part of it, to work with the UFC on it is just gets me going.
Mm-hmm. Matt, how about yourself? What has excited you the most about, the Sphere, I guess, combining it with the UFC? And obviously the UFC is just taken off to another level since they've been with ESPN.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's awesome to be here. I mean, we have an incredible relationship with the UFC. When we first heard about this event, we always like saying fans are smart. We have a ton of fans here at ESPN, and the opportunity for us to help the UFC tell this story, to help get behind this historic event. We're all excited here. And as Glenn mentioned, the opportunity to be first. One of the things about the UFC is that our gears mesh really well. Innovation is a priority for us at ESPN. Status quo isn't an option for the UFC. So the opportunity for us to work together on this is it's awesome. And it's been cool to see so many people from across the organization contribute to this event, whether it's the promotion, the programming, certainly on the production side. I think fans are going to be in for a real treat on Saturday night.
Matt, I'll stay with you. The Sphere, is it just too distinctive, too unique of a venue to compare it to anything else that we've maybe witnessed in the past, the Olympics, the World Cup? Have we ever seen anything that'll take us to what we're seeing? Or maybe even just a real ritzy theater where we caught the last 3D movie? I mean, I don't know. In fact, let me throw one more in there. Have you guys heard of Cosm in LA? That seems to be a pretty big deal too. Is it something that just, captivates you in a different way?
Yeah, I think a shout out to Jeb Terry and the Cosm guys. They're doing an incredible job, and so we've certainly been we're familiar with Cosm, and they are doing some real incredible work. I mean, look, I think for this is that there's just natural curiosity around the Sphere. I think so many people saw clips of U2 over the summer, and it really unleashes the imagination a bit. And I gotta tell you, I think everyone is waiting to see what this actually is. But at the end of the day, I think the fans are going to be the ones that win. And then the opportunity for us to bring something unique and innovative, something completely different, to fans on ESPN platforms it's pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys, I'll get into the weeds on this with you because we're doing this. The Sphere is so different than any other environment you've ever seen a sporting event in that it's almost impossible to create a comparison. It's not like apples to oranges. It's apples to something completely different. And so for this event, the UFC has had to rethink literally everything. When you go to all these other arenas, where'd you put the octagon? Well, you put the octagon right in the middle, where you put in every arena. At Sphere, you had to rethink where's the octagon go, and what's in every arena. There's that giant center overhanging scoreboard, and underneath it are the lights that light the octagon. Well, there's no overhead scoreboard in Sphere. So the UFC had to figure out how to light the octagon. How do you light this event? So even those basics had to be rethought from the ground up. That's before you even get to all the really, really cool stuff that they're doing, like these mini movies, everything else that goes into this that's going to make this thing one of a kind. It is a true recreation. What Craig Borsari and his team are doing is so wildly ambitious that it's hard for me to even describe to you guys.
Glenn, since you're VP of MMA production, let me ask you this one, because the UFC notoriously is usually hands-on when it comes to production. We got our own announcers or whatever. Have they loosened the reins a little bit, since this appears to be a collaboration between many people, including Dana saying we brought in people from Hollywood, directors that are have won awards and things like that. And if so, what has been the ESPN contribution on that side?
So I'll take that in two parts. The first part is there's no secret that the UFC produces the events on ESPN. They are UFC productions. But the UFC has been incredibly collaborative on all our events. I sit next to Zach Candido at all the pay-per-views. And, I joke all the time that by contract, I could say to Zach, hey, Zach, what if we consider doing this here? And Zach can say, leave me alone. Like, it's our production. But that never happens. Like, they are incredibly collaborative. And because ultimately they just want to put on the best event. But for Sphere specifically, Craig has assembled, I call them internally, because we're at Disney, like I call them internally the creative Avengers. They have brought in, look, Glenn Weiss, the guy's directed the Oscars for like the last 6 years. And he's directing now a UFC event. Carlos, who's the creative director for the mini movies, directed Ray of the Last Dragon, directed Blindspotting. Like, we're talking heavyweights in the creative community to build up. Look, what does the UFC do? They put on great fights. They're going to be great fights. O'Malley Merab is going to be unbelievable among everything else. But they have assembled a team creating what goes around those fights. It's going to be spectacular.
We're talking to Glenn Jacobs and Matt Kenny from ESPN. UFC 306 is this weekend, folks. Don't forget, you can order the pay-per-view through ESPN Plus. And Goz and I will be hosting a UFC 306 watch-along on Saturday. All 10 fights starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be a fun time with our new partners over at DraftKings as well. Goz, what do you have for the gents?
So, gentlemen, if George and I were to look outside our window, we would see the Sphere. We're here in Vegas. We see it all the time. So you don't got to sell us on that. We know how magnificent that thing is. But what would you say to maybe the people at home that are ordering the pay-per-view that won't be in there? What aspect of everything that's new that comes with the Sphere will they be able to kind of take in and enjoy and maybe even feel as if they were there?
That's really why I'll jump in first quickly. That's been part of the real challenge here of this event is you have to produce the event that's really cool for the people in the arena, but there's going to be way more people watching it on TV. So there has been a lot of focus spent on how do we capture this all for TV so the fans at home feel like they're seeing something that's special and different. And every aspect of this production is going to feel different. The music is going to feel different. What the announcers are wearing is going to be different. Again, there are these series of mini movies that are going to play between pay-per-view fights, tracing the history of Mexico and fighting sports in Mexico. It's the presentation is going to feel completely unique. And I would say even from the prelims to the main card is going to be just feel next level compared to the prelims. I think the prelims are going to feel pretty darn cool already.
And I wanted to ask you guys as well, being Mexican Americans, we're part of this generation that grew up on boxing and then migrated over to mixed martial arts, but our love for boxing has never gone away. And some of those names that get thrown around when we talk about the legends of the sports, Julio Cesar Chavez, Juan Manuel Marquez, these guys just have this style that is very difficult to be replicated. And I know you probably can't tell us, but I have a feeling they may be showcased a little bit here. People like ourselves that grew up on boxing. Is there something there for maybe people who aren't as big of an MMA fan, but are also boxing fans, is there something there for them as well? Just kind of taking in, seeing your pride up there, what has gone on, what you grew up watching. Would they be even interested in something like this?
Yeah, I think 100%. And Glenn, we could tag team on this one. I think, Dana has been very, very vocal about this event being a love letter to Mexico and a true celebration of the Mexican fighting spirit. And you're right. There is such a rich history, rich traditions. Some of the most legendary fights out there have featured Mexican warriors. And so I think really, whether you're a diehard UFC fan, whether you're a casual sports fan that's really interested in entertainment, if you are a passionate boxing fan, I think there's something for everybody at this event. And that's why I think there's so much curiosity and genuine interest and buzz for this event.
And when Dana says it's a love letter to Mexico, like Dana means that. Like what you're going to see is just truly immersed in celebrating the Mexican fighting spirit. If you saw the promo that ran, started I think in the Contender Series last Tuesday and then ran in the Fight Night, where Dana talks about, if you say to someone you fight like a Mexican, it's like the highest compliment you can give. And I think what the UFC is trying to build in Mexico with the Mexican PI and the growth of fighters like Raul Rosas Jr. is to attempt to see a little bit of a change. Like if you're a young, Mexican growing up, male, female, and you want to get into fighting, like maybe now you don't think boxing first. Maybe we're getting to a point where you might think MMA instead. And I think the UFC is providing a pathway, and they're going to celebrate that this weekend.
Guys, you're looking at probably two guys that have been on the wrong side of love letters. So we know that sometimes there's a little tragedy that comes with these love
Usually
letters.
my heart's getting broken, yeah.
So let me ask you, this is where we're anticipating. We hear that this is going to be the only one. And we know Dana White. I feel like if this were a success, maybe we could see another one. So my first question is, do you guys honestly believe this will be the last one? And the second part of that question is, if it were great the way it's being built, is there like a scaled back version of this that they could do that maybe wouldn't cost so much, but that would be in the rotation? Because this being the fight capital of the world, that sphere there every day, we want this to kind of become a part of the culture of mixed martial arts going forward. Do you guys answer that?
Yeah, Glenn, I'll give it a shot. I think one of the really special things about the roles that Glenn and I have here at ESPN is the opportunity to work so closely with UFC. I think there are a lot of people that likely have lost a lot of money betting against UFC and betting against Dana, and it's just impressive and inspiring when you hear about that passion to do things that people would otherwise tell you you're crazy for even dreaming about. I don't think they do anything in a scaled back version.
That's what I was going to say too, Matt. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I don't know if that's in their DNA, but I do know that their focus on delivering, for lack of a better word, just these oh shit moments for fight fans is genuine and real and part of everything that they do. And for that reason, I can't wait to see what they do this Saturday night. And hopefully that inspires, the imagination to think of what's next after that. Because as we've seen with the UFC and our relationship with the UFC, like we're always pushing the envelope together.
I think that's where Matt's hit on that, I think is exactly right. Like, I think the way the UFC is approaching this with Dana saying it's a one of one is that they are going all out, like balls to the wall here, like to make this a singular sporting event. And that's how they're approaching it. Might they see it's awesome and do another one? Maybe, but I think they're approaching it like this is our shot to provide something great for sports fans. Let's go all out on it. And so that's why I think the focus is where it is.
So George and I in our lifetimes, we've been to a World Cup, we've been to a Copa America, World Series, these types of events, when you go to them, sometimes even if the game isn't that good, you just walk out knowing that you have this sense of checking something off your bucket list. You know, I was there. Not very many people can say that. In your guys' eyes, how much do the fights play into this night? Because there's so much being put into this. Is there a possibility where maybe if the fights didn't deliver as well, we would still kind of walk out with a smile on our face just because of the magnitude of the event?
I think, look, I think I think Sphere is, I've said it internally, I describe it as like Sphere is a character in how we're talking about this fight. And there's no doubt in many ways it's the main character because the origin story of how Dana sort of created it and everything else. But by the way, what the UFC just does so well, what Hunter and Sean and Nick do so well is matchmaking. And I think what they've done here is put together a card that is built for action. And so I think we're going to see that play out on Saturday night, that the card is also going to be great. And the energy level of both are going to feed off each other. So you're going to get cool moment in Sphere, and then you're going to get great fight, cool moment in Sphere, great fight. And hopefully by the time you hit Sean O'Malley, like the energy level is going to be ready to like blow the roof off the thing.
Now, we have another big event taking place in Las Vegas. Another Mexican, Canelo Alvarez, is going to be boxing, but it's not till later. Will the love letter and all that start early, where a boxing fan can tune in to this event, possibly even stay with it? Because let's be honest here, Canelo's a minus 1,600 favorite against Edgar Berlanga, I believe is his name. We're just tuning into what's going to be another butt whooping, another decision by Canelo. And I love boxing, but I think it's fair to say, because that's just kind of been his route lately, could we possibly have enough boxing fans that tune in and either watch two different screens or just want to stay with this event? When does all that start? Is it from the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I'd answer it this way. I think there's a ton of competition as it is, right? It's a busy time in the sports calendar. And you know, there is always competition. For pay-per-views, you're competing against people going out to dinner, and you're trying to incentivize folks to stay home and vote with their wallets by in this case selecting UFC 306 at Sphere. So we're really laser focused on our event. We're laser focused on everything that we're going to be doing. There are going to be some incredible, and Glenn, I think it'd be great for you to hit some of the things fans could expect in terms of the cut-ins to college football. But we are getting behind this event. We are celebrating it. We're embracing it, and really leveraging our platforms to create as much awareness as possible for what truly is a one-of-a-kind event.
But Matt, let me say with you for a second, does it start early though on the prelims where we can maybe, because I want MMA to win the night, so I want to steal some of those fans as they're watching it with us and say, hey, that other fight's that's a mismatch up there, because that's really what it is. Whereas MMA, anything can happen. We have 8 limbs, we have elbows, knees, fists, kicks. Let's keep them there. But does it start early, the draw?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it will build throughout the evening. So starting with the very first fight in the prelims all the way through Marab and Sugar.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what
it's gonna feel special from moment one.
Right.
Nice. All right. Guys, what have been the biggest challenges? Glenn, we'll go to you first on that one. I'm sure there's been some. Is there any that stand out? Or
yeah, I mean, look, we talked about a little of it already, but I think and again, Craig has jumped over so many, and his team have jumped over so many hurdles. But I sort of think from our perspective, the biggest one is what we talked about before, which is how do you create both an event that can be fully enjoyed by the people in the arena and the people who are sitting at home watching on TV? Because if you guys know, if you've been in Sphere, like you spend your time sort of doing this all the time. Mm-hmm. But like when you're watching at home, you're going to be watching it through a box. So how do we, as content producers, how do we bring you an experience that captures what it's like to be in there? That's what we're really trying to do.
Okay. I guess my only final question is, what happens at 3 a.m.? We hear about from 3 a.m. is when you go in. Have you simulated a fight to get, I guess, fighter feedback? The only thing that scared me of all this, and I usually am a positive person, and I know Saturday is going to be a historical event. I think we're going to be talking about it like the way they talk about the Rumble in the Jungle, the Thrilla in Manila, things that have happened only one time, right? But, they still live on. And I think this one has it. Although, unlike those, I hope it does come back because I want to go to one. But anyway, the one thing I can think of is, I know that when the NCAA has gone when they've gone and done the Final Fours, like in San Antonio, the Alamo Dome, right, or Indianapolis, I think they have a dome. Some athletes have said it took me a while to find my stroke because of the depth perception, right? And I was wondering if there's something like that that's been a concern from the athlete's point of view. Have you guys heard anything like that?
I have not heard anything raised on that yet. It is, I think at the end of the day, it's why I was talking with some of our folks about it internally, who are analysts. Like, it's still an octagon, and that's still the basics. Like, and it's still fighting. So there's going to be all this pageantry around it, but when they close the door, they close the door, and that's how I think the fighters are going after this thing.
Yeah, and it's been happening for thousands of years. That's for sure. Roman Coliseum, bowling alleys, behind Jack in the Box. I don't know. At least that's where we used to get down. Raider games. But no, it's going to be a great event, guys. And I want to thank you both for stopping by and sharing this with our audience. Can't wait. It's this Saturday, folks. UFC 306 out at the Sphere. Glenn and Matt, we really appreciate your time today, and we hope you guys knock it out of the park on Saturday.
Right on. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.